Welcome to the Rewards Master. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what I believe are perhaps the 5 worst airline credit cards available on the market today at the end of 2025. Now, it's kind of hard to limit this down to 5 because there are a lot of really bad airline credit cards. But these are the 5 that I think kind of lead the pack when it comes to cards that even if you fly on that airline, you might be better off picking something else or just passing on them completely. So if you would, hit the like and subscribe button, and let's dive into it together. Now, as I started to do research for this list, it kind of surprised me because I expected some cards to make the list that actually didn't. They were a little bit better when I looked at them and tried to do an honest evaluation. If I actually flew that airline, would it be helpful to me? And it was cards like Frontier and the Spirit credit card. I mean, I'm never going to fly Spirit, and I'm probably never going to fly Frontier, so it's inapplicable to me, as it may be to many of you. But I tried to ask the question, if I did fly that airline, would these cards have some benefit to me? And some of them actually did. I mean, it was like interesting because some of them will give you extra points on your anniversary that kind of make up for the annual fee. Some of them have pretty low annual fees. Some of them are airlines that just nickel and dime you to death when you fly on them because, as you know, with both Frontier and Spirit, they'll charge you for things like a carry-on bag, and they charge you through the teeth for your checked bags. But these cards often offer free checked bags, sometimes 2 checked bags, which on those airlines is even more valuable and seemingly more impressive than it is on some of their big brother competitors, that it's pretty typical on their airlines to be able to get free bags. So that really surprised me because some of them just didn't make the list. It also surprised me because some cards on this list I have formerly thought, particularly one card, and I'll point that out when we get to it, is a pretty decent card. And it's one of my favorite issuers and one of my very favorite airlines. But yet, even though I've had this card and I did find good use, when I compared it to its competitors and the other cards in its lineup, I just thought, well, it really isn't that good. And so in all honesty, I had to include it in the list. Now, there are some honorable mentions in this list that didn't make the list because they have some very niche cases. Things like, I use the American Airlines World Elite Executive Card, the one that gives Admirals Club access. And it is very expensive, $595. It gives full lounge access to you and to 2 guests or your entire immediate family. And that's all very, very useful for heavy flyers with American, people who fly a lot for business or whatever it may be. So that card has a very specific use case. Now, the credits are not very good on it. You don't get much of it back. Consistently, I only get about $240 back of the $595. But it also has some niche use cases, like, for instance, it gives some status boosts. And so if you're a status flyer, that's very good. Another one similar to that is that new American Airlines Globe card. It's not going to work for a lot of people, but for people who are status flyers with American Airlines, I think it can be very, very good. Same is true with some of the United cards. I think overall the United card lineup has gotten far worse since their refresh. But I really didn't include any of the United cards on this list, even though if the list was more expansive, if it went to 10 or 15 different cards, some of them would definitely have made the list because the credits are really goofy and hard to use. But for a person who is a dedicated United flyer, I think you could indeed make them work. So they didn't make this list. So what are the cards that I think are the worst credit cards for airlines on the market right now? Well, let me tell you, I'll start at the bottom at number 5. So this is the least egregious of the list, and that is all 3 of the no annual fee options from the big airlines, Delta, American, and United. So with Delta, that's the Delta Blue card. With American, that is the Mile Up card. And with United, that's called their Gateway card. Now, these cards have no annual fee, and they just aren't very good. I mean, if anything, you might get 2 points per dollar on the airline, and maybe there's one in there that gives you a little bit of an extra boost on something else, dining or gas. I'm not even sure. I didn't even look them up. I've had all three of them through the years, and they're all just placeholder cards. What I mean by that is if you actually fly on the airline, you need to get at least the $95 card, the one that has some sort of annual fee, because these cards just don't give any benefits. I mean, they're not going to give you free checked bags. They're not going to give you priority boarding, and they're going to earn just atrocious. And that's true of all airline credit cards, with the exception of just a couple. When I was doing my research, pretty much all of them just don't earn well at all. Surprisingly, a couple of the cards, especially one of the foreign cards, airline cards, surprised me because it earned 1.5 on all your purchases. Well, that's actually quite unique for an airline card because they just don't earn. But these ones especially don't earn. They don't even earn well on the airline they're associated with. So these cards are bad. Now, of the list, though, of the three, the Gateway and the Delta Blue card and the Miles Up card with American Airlines, I think the American Airlines card is the best of the three, although it still deserves to be right here on the list. But it would slightly top the other two, only because it's the only one of the list that actually spending helps you get to status. So you can earn loyalty points with American. The others don't help you get to status at all. But I have to ask the question, if you're seeking status, why do you have the no annual fee card with American? So it's kind of like, yes, it can, but why would anybody do that? So I have to put those three no annual fee cards at the number 5 spot. So they do have a place because you might want to have them as a placeholder. In other words, you downgrade to that card so that you can upgrade, or maybe with Delta, American Express often give upgrade offers. So you might want to do that. But as far as just holding these cards because you want to fly that airline, just not a good idea. And they make it to the 5th place on this list. The 4th one on this list is a card I'll never get, and probably most of you will never get, but it's the Allegiant Allways card. And this card is for Allegiant Airlines, which is kind of just a small little regional carrier. They fly these little jets to and fro. Sometimes they go to vacation destinations, Orlando, places like that. And they are a budget airline. Now, this card has just one of the most atrocious sign-up bonuses. It's a $59 annual fee card. Does give you free check bag, stuff like that. But it's 25,000 points for $1,000 in spend. So 25,000 points, their points don't scale up. You're not going to be able to get business class or first class redemptions and get outsized value. So basically that's worth $250 off of a flight with Allegiant. So, I mean, I guess you could say that for the $1,000 spend, that might be worth your money, but the card just doesn't offer very much. It's just not very good. The earnings, as with almost every card on this list, are pretty bad. You get 3x on Allegiant, you get 2x on dining, 1x on everything else. Who would spend on this card as their spending card? But it does give those multipliers. Now, sometimes these cards will give like a neat little perk. And you can get that sometimes just for holding the card for more than a year with the better cards. But with some of them like this one, it's a spend associated perk. In other words, you got to spend so much money on the card, then you get something. So what you get with this one is you get a companion certificate. Now remember, it's a companion certificate on a bargain basement airline that is not got very expensive tickets anyway, after you spend $5,000 a year on the card. Now, I just can't imagine any world, any circumstance where that would be worth it to me, because we may be talking about a ticket that's worth $150 or $200 or maybe $250, but it's a companion certificate on a budget airline that I got to spend $5,000 on this card to get it. So to me, the Allegiant Allways card, it is just not good, and it makes it to the number 4 spot on my list. Number 3 is the one that I said earlier surprised me to make it onto the list because I've had this card. A lot of people have this card, and it is one of my favorite issuers and also one of my probably my favorite airline currency, and that is the American Airlines Advantage Platinum card. This is their $99 offering that is pretty much the standard card that people get with American Airlines. It's probably the most common one that they issue. This card, $99, as we said, it doesn't have good multipliers, but it does give you all the different things that you expect from a card like this. It gives you free checked bags, it gives you some priority boarding, all of that kind of stuff. It does give a few elevated multipliers, if you can call them elevated. I guess they're elevated for an airline card. 2x on dining, 2x on gas, 2x on American Airlines purchases. But that doesn't excite anybody. In fact, multipliers just on airline cards typically don't. So this card, it's all right. I mean, it's not terrible. The problem is the reason I had to rank it low is because how it compares to its competitors in this particular space, and that is the Delta card and the United Explorer card. The Delta Gold card, it gives some automatic credits when you use the card for things like Delta stays. So you can get back, even though it's a little bit more money, the Delta Gold, it absolutely can give you back to where it's a net zero annual fee. The other competitor, the United Explorer card, gives several credits. They are kind of goofy and you got to work to get them, and they're not great, but it does give some credits back. And then in addition to that, you do get a couple of passes to the United Club. So those are kind of neat features. And their sign-up bonuses on the other cards are typically the same or a little bit better than this card. This card only has a 50,000 point sign-up bonus as its typical sign-up bonus with $2,500 in spend. So that's not great, but what about the perks? Like we said, the others give you a credit if you book through their hotel program, or they give you a couple United Club passes. What does this one give? Well, you get a $125 flight credit. Well, that sounds pretty good, but here's the problem. You get a $125 flight credit after you spend $20,000 on the card. $20,000. So when I looked at that, honestly, I'm like, well, yes, I know this has a place for some people who want a cheap card, especially now that the Barclays cards are going away. This card is going to have a place for some people, but if we're honest about it, it's just not very good. It's not as good as its competitors. To get your value back on the card, well, I suppose you could argue the free bags would give it to you, but to get additional value like its competitors give very easily, this card, you got to spend $20,000 on it. So I think that it definitely makes it on the list, and I put it at number 3. Number 2 is a trio of chase cards for the Avios programs: British Airways, Iberia, and Aer Lingus. Now, all of these cards, of course, it doesn't really matter which one you have, because if you transfer your points over to, you get points in that program, you can transfer them between Avios programs. So that's kind of nice. You kind of get 3 in 1 regardless of which one of these cards you get. They're $95. They have decent sign-up bonus. With all of them, it's about 75,000 points. And their multipliers aren't great. 3x on the airline, 2x on something else, and then you get 1x. So not great multipliers, as is true with all the cards on this list. And then they all have kind of slightly different variances of the same benefits. You get a 10% discount when you book the airline with the card. And then they all offer some sort of companion discount or companion pass. However, to get that, and of course the pass would be a little better than the discount. I can't remember which one gives which, but they're all very, very similar. But to get that, you got to spend $30,000 on the card. $30,000. I am not going to spend at these multipliers, the value of these points, I'm not going to spend $30,000. You know how many sign-up bonuses you can get with that? So to me, these cards are just not good at all, and they make it to number 2. Which brings us to the granddaddy worst credit card, in my opinion, on the market associated with an airline. And it is the only, quote, premium card on this list. In other words, the high-end card for an airline. We don't see Deltas or Americans. We don't see United's high-end card on this list, because this one is just so very, very bad. This card has a $499 annual fee. So what do you get for that $500? Well, it should be good, right? Well, as far as multipliers, It does have more than most cards on the list. It has 6x on JetBlue. It has 6x on Paisley, which is kind of their online booking program. So you could get that on some hotels and things like that, which seems not that bad. 2x on restaurants and grocery stores, and 1x on everything else. So depending on how you value JetBlue, it might be the best earner on the list, which you got to give it some kudos to that. But then you start digging into the card and you find out when you ask, how much is $500 worth on this card? And it's just, the answer is not much. It does give a $300 Paisley travel credit. And on the surface, that sounds pretty good. If you were to be able to just get on there and book a hotel and use $300 of the travel credit, that would reduce your annual fee down to about $200 a year, which is somewhat better. However, there are so many hoops and catches to this, it's just insane. It's broken up into 6 $50 credits. And on each one of them, there's a spend requirement. And that spend requirement is $250 per booking. To get your $300, you got to make 6 bookings and you got to spend a total of a minimum of $1,500. That is just absolutely maybe the worst credit any card has on the market. It's just terrible. The other thing that's hilarious is it does give you some lounge access, which you'd think on a high-end card, that's good. It gives priority pass, which doesn't ever really excite any of us who have a lot of cards because we have so many priority passes. But it gives priority pass, I think, with 1 guest, which isn't the best, but it's not as bad as like Venture X now. But it gives that priority pass. But then they advertise, and JetBlue lounge access. Here's the problem. There are no JetBlue lounges. Now, they say they're going to build some, but how long does it take to build a lounge? So here you're going to have a card that might give you a benefit at maybe 1 or 2 airports in maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years. How ridiculous is that? This card is just bad. I mean, I do not know. In fact, I don't know anybody who has it. I've never heard anybody do a review or an unboxing who got it. I wonder how many of these they're actually issuing to the public, if any at all, because it is that bad. It maths out so horribly that I just don't see how anybody makes it work. Well, that's my list of what I think are the 5 worst airline cards on the market right now. Let me know in the comments below if you agree, if you disagree, if you think I missed some that should have been on this list, because there's a lot of them out there. I indeed could have. So please put that down below. Also consider my channel membership. It's $2.99 a month. You can cancel anytime you like. I do special videos for channel members. I do early release videos and some other things. So look down there, and if you want to consider that, please join. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button, and hopefully I will see you here next time.